On the day I got married, while everyone else was whispering about my dress, the flowers, the weather, I was keeping something far bigger under wraps. I had a secret. Not the kind you confess during bridal party games or whisper to your best friend after too many mimosas. Join me and subscribe my channel as I dive into the crazy story of how I inherited a secret island from my grandfather without even mentioning it on my wedding day. No, this was the kind of secret that could change the entire direction of a marriage. I had inherited a private island, not a figurative island like emotional baggage or some metaphor about independence. No, I'm talking about an actual, physical, GPS locatable island. White sand, dense trees, an old boat dock, even a crumbling little bungalow tucked into the greenery. My grandfather left it to me in his will, a surprise no one in my family saw coming, including me, and I didn't tell my husband. Not before the wedding, not after the engagement, not ever. Standing there in front of him, wearing my mother's veil and a heart full of love, I kept thinking, what if this changes how he sees me? What if it makes everything weird or complicated? So I smiled, said I do, and tucked the island, my secret paradise, deep into a corner of my heart, locked tight. At the time, I thought I was doing the right thing, that some things were better left unspoken, that the island wasn't relevant. But as the months rolled on and marriage brought with it new layers of intimacy, compromise, and vulnerability, I began to wonder, was I protecting something sacred? Or was I just afraid of losing control? Secrets have weight. Not the obvious kind like carrying a backpack or moving boxes, but the invisible, emotional kind that sits on your shoulders when you're trying to fall asleep. And that island? It got heavier every day. At first, it didn't seem like a big deal. I justified it easily. It's not like I'm hiding debt or a child or a criminal past. It's just land, a weird inheritance, something out of a movie. And besides, it wasn't like I could sell it or move there overnight. The place needed serious work. It was more mystery than luxury. But what gnawed at me wasn't the island itself, it was what keeping it meant. Marriage is supposed to be about trust, right? About building a life together with nothing but love and honesty between you. And here I was, brushing my teeth next to a man I adored, cooking breakfast with him, laughing at shows, sharing pillow talk, all while this huge, life-altering thing sat quietly in the shadows. What would he say if he found out? Would he think I didn't trust him? That I was plotting something? Would it change how he saw me, how we built our future? I imagined 100 different conversations, each one ending worse than the last. And then there was the other fear I didn't want to admit. What if the island made me different in his eyes? Less humble, less us, more mine? That's the thing about secrets. You start out thinking you're protecting your relationship, but sometimes you're just protecting yourself from the truth you don't want to face. If you had asked me about my grandfather growing up, I would have said he was eccentric, the kind of man who wore flannel shirts even in summer and always smelled faintly of cedarwood and old cigars. He wasn't the warm and fuzzy grandpa type. He was a mystery, wrapped in a riddle, sealed in a metal lunchbox he carried everywhere like it held national secrets. He never talked much about his past, and no one pressed. We figured he'd seen things, maybe war, maybe worse. All I knew was he'd moved to the US decades ago, built a modest life, and kept to himself after my grandmother passed. But he loved maps. God, the man collected maps like other people collect coins. Ancient, water-stained, crumpled corners, strange hand-drawn annotations. I once asked why, and he just said, the world hides things. Most people never find them. I thought he was being poetic. Turns out, he was being literal. He passed away, quietly, and after the funeral, the lawyer handed me an envelope marked for her eyes only. Inside was a letter written in his slanted handwriting, and a deed to a private island in his home country, off the grid. No phone lines, no formal address, just GPS coordinates and a warning. Some things are best discovered slowly. I laughed out loud. Like, what? Was this a prank from beyond the grave? But the deed was real. The lawyer confirmed it. And just like that, I was the owner of a secret island my grandfather had never told anyone else about. Not my mom, not my uncles, just me. Why me? I'll never know. Maybe he saw something in me. Maybe I reminded him of himself. Or maybe, deep down, he trusted I'd know what to do with a secret that big. And truth be told, part of me loved having that secret. It made me feel chosen, connected to a part of my family's history I never even knew existed. It was the biggest thing I'd ever owned, and the lawn It happened 6 months into our marriage, on a random Tuesday night that started off so normal. We were curled up on the couch, eating takeout pad thai, binge-watching a documentary about people who found treasure on abandoned land. One guy had discovered a cave full of World War II artifacts. Another inherited an old farmhouse with Civil War-era gold hidden in its walls. My husband turned to me and laughed. "You ever wish you had a long-lost relative with a secret treasure?" He joked, half laughing, half dreaming. I choked on a rice noodle. I forced a smile. Yeah, wouldn't that be something? It should have ended there, but of course, it didn't. He paused the TV, looked at me. "You know, your grandfather always seemed mysterious. I never really heard much about him. You ever inherit anything from him?" And just like that, boom, that single question hit harder than any argument we'd ever had. Not because he asked anything wrong, but because, in that moment, I panicked. My heart started racing. My mind was screaming, "Tell him." But my mouth just stammered something lame about a few old books and his walking stick. I could see it in my husband's eyes. He didn't quite buy it, but he didn't push. We sat in silence after that, the documentary forgotten, the pad thai getting cold. He eventually unpaused the show, but I wasn't watching. I was staring at the wall, caught between guilt and fear. And here's the honest truth. I wasn't hiding the island because I didn't trust him. I was hiding it because I didn't know what it meant yet. To me, to my family, to us. It wasn't just land. It was legacy, mystery, possibly something dangerous or sacred, and I wasn't ready to share it, not even with the person I loved most. That night, lying next to him in bed, I felt a distance that hadn't been there before. He was sleeping soundly, but I was wide awake, wondering if I'd just planted a seed of doubt that would someday grow roots between us. Secrets have weight, even beautiful ones. And that night, I realized mine was starting to get heavy. The months that followed were complicated. On the outside, everything looked fine. We still went on date nights, took weekend road trips, posted smiling selfies. But on the inside, I was carrying something I couldn't shake, this island-sized secret that sat like a weight on my chest. I thought I was protecting him. I kept telling myself that. "It's just an island," I whispered one night alone in the shower. But it wasn't. Not really. It was history, family, possibly danger, and definitely money. I kept remembering something my grandfather used to say when I was little. Some truths aren't ready to be spoken. Let them ripen. And I believed him. Until I realized he never had to keep a secret from someone he loved. The truth was, every time I looked into my husband's eyes, I felt a little more distant, a little more like a liar. And the more time passed, the more the secret morphed from something cool I'd inherited to something I was ashamed of hiding. It's weird how silence can be louder than shouting. There were moments when I'd almost tell him, like when we drove past a coastal real estate sign and he joked, "Maybe someday we'll buy an island." I laughed hard. He noticed, or when he started asking questions about our finances and if we should start saving for a house. My throat tightened. I changed the subject. Every avoided conversation added a brick to the wall between us. Until one night, staring at that man who had given me his heart, I realized I had two choices. Keep pretending this secret was noble, or admit that I was just afraid of how he'd see me, afraid it might change everything. And that's when I truly understood something. Love isn't just about trust. It's about truth. Even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's risky, I knew I had to tell him. Not because I wanted to ease my guilt, but because he deserved to know the whole of me, the mysterious, complicated, inherited island me. But the question was, how and when? I've replayed that choice 100 times in my mind, when I almost told him, when I didn't, when I should have, and when I finally did. And now that you know this much of my story, I want to ask you something. What would you have done? Would you have kept the secret like I did, afraid that the truth might shake the foundation of your marriage? Or would you have come clean right away, no matter how wild or unbelievable the story was? I'm genuinely curious because I've learned that secrets, even the good ones, have a weight. And sometimes the only way to carry them is to share them. So tell me, would you have told your spouse right after the wedding? Would you have waited, never said a word? Or maybe turned the whole thing into a romantic adventure and flown them to the island with no warning? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'll be reading every single one. and if you've ever held onto a secret big or small that shaped your life or your relationships. I'd love to hear your story too. You're not alone. Also, if this story pulled at your heart or made you wonder what mysteries you might be carrying, go ahead and subscribe. I have more stories coming, some even crazier than this one. This is just one chapter of a much bigger journey. It didn't happen with some grand gesture or cinematic reveal. No dramatic music. No helicopters flying us to a mystery island. It happened in the quietest, most vulnerable way possible on a rainy Thursday evening, in our tiny living room over half-eaten takeout and a glass of wine. He had just finished telling me about his stressful day. I was listening, nodding, but my heart was pounding. I couldn't keep it in anymore. The secret had lived between us for too long, like a quiet third party in our marriage. I put down my glass and said, "There's something I need to tell you, and I need you to promise you'll let me finish before you say anything." He raised an eyebrow, curious, but calm. That's one of the things I've always loved about him. He listens, and so I told him about the letter from my grandfather, about the maps, the old journals, the coordinates, about how I flew out to the island alone before our wedding just to see if it was even real, and how it was very real. I told him I didn't tell him sooner because I was scared. Scared it would sound too far-fetched. Scared it would change how he saw me. Scared it might create a wedge between us. I was breathless by the time I finished. I felt like I had just handed him a live wire and was waiting for it to spark. He didn't say a word right away. He just looked at me, really looked at me, and then he did something I didn't expect. He laughed, not mockingly, not bitterly, just softly, with that slight head shake he does when he's trying to process something big. Then he said, "You're the most fascinating woman I've ever known. And now I know why." And just like that, the weight lifted, not because everything was suddenly easy, but because the wall between us was gone. That night, we stayed up until a.m. making plans about the island, the history, the possibilities. He wanted to see it, to walk its sands, hear the waves, touch a piece of the legacy I'd been handed. It wasn't just a secret anymore. It was our story now. Looking back, I sometimes ask myself, was it wrong to keep the island a secret for so long? Maybe. But here's what I've come to understand. Life doesn't always hand us answers neatly packaged with a bow. Sometimes we inherit secrets we're not ready to unpack. Sometimes we protect the people we love not because we want to deceive them, but because we're still trying to understand what the truth means to us. My grandfather's island wasn't just land surrounded by water. It was a buried story, a generation's worth of choices, a symbol of everything he never said out loud but left behind for me to discover. In that silence, I found my voice. In that secret, I found a new beginning, and in finally sharing it, I didn't lose anything. I gained trust, adventure, and a deeper connection than I ever imagined. If you're carrying something, some legacy, some truth you're scared to speak out loud, know this: the right people will listen. They won't run. They won't use it against you. They'll lean in. They'll walk the journey with you. And if you're really lucky, they'll want to explore your island with you, both the real one and the emotional kind. Because sometimes, the greatest stories aren't the ones we tell immediately. They're the ones we carry until we're finally strong enough to let them be heard. That island didn't just change my life. It revealed who I really am. And for that, I'll always be grateful.